Compendium podcast hosted by Leadership Books. In just a moment, our host, Joseph Baker, will be joining us, along with a very special guest. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to Joseph. He's a podcaster, event producer, writer, speaker, and audience builder. His passion is to help authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs build their audiences to monetize their leadership. Won't you please welcome our host, Joseph Baker.
Well, welcome everyone to the Compendium podcast. I am here today with Reinhard Klett. Reinhard helps business leaders achieve more of what matters most to them through high-performance coaching, uniquely personalized to their specific needs. As a certified high-performance coach, he coaches clients to apply the 5 high-performance habits, which is strongly correlated to higher performance and fulfillment in life. To raise their profitability, he helps leaders develop outstanding company cultures with fully engaged employees. Reinhard, welcome to the Compendium podcast.
Thank you.
Before we jump into a few questions and talk about your book, tell us, what are you up to these days?
Well, what I'm up to these days is I enjoy very much coaching my clients. I started out when I lost my job as a real estate investor. And as I got into that, I got to coach myself. And I enjoyed the process so much that I decided to get into coaching myself. And I've enjoyed this more than anything else I've ever done. So that's what I really enjoy. And also I'm volunteering for an organization called Branding Branches Worldwide, which, where I'm mentoring a young business owner, Christian business owner down in Cape Town, South Africa. So that's a very exciting part of what I do.
Oh, that's very cool. Very cool. And where are you located these days?
In Ohio. That is in rural Northeast Ohio, in Worcester, which is about 1 hour south of Cleveland.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, let's jump into your book, talk a little bit about that today. So in the book, and I was able to read one of the chapters that you actually supplied ahead of time, you tell a pretty intense story about a brush with death that you had when operating an airplane. So, rather than tease it out, why don't you go ahead and just tell us that story and tell us how that led to this process of writing this book?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually in California when I lived in Pasadena for 4 years. And at the end of my 4 years there, a friend of mine became a flight instructor. And so I had an opportunity to fulfill a childhood dream. And that was always something I wanted to do, is get a private pilot's license. And so what happened is I was on my 3rd solo flight after about 12 hours of flight training. And I was supposed to practice approach to landing stall recovery. Landing, when you land, you're pretty close to the ground, and you want to have a good feel for when a plane stalls. You stall at the moment you touch down, but you don't want to stall it before, because you're too close to the ground. You can't recover. It can be very bad. So I practiced that at 2,500 feet over Simi Valley. Got everything prepared. I was rocking the plane and looking all over the place, making sure there were no other aircraft around me. I advised Burbank Tower to tell me, well, if there's any other aircraft around me, let me know. And so I started the maneuver. I was pulling up the plane to slow it down to stall speed. And, the plane feels pretty unstable, and you get kind of nervous. I mean, I had practiced that before, but this time I was alone. No flight instructor, nobody to help me. And so I got pretty nervous. The stall warning horn goes off. I put the flaps out because it was an approach to landing stall recovery. And then I pulled the plane the wheel closer to me to slow down the plane even more, to actually get to a stall. And all of a sudden, what happened? I expected the nose to drop, but the left wing dropped before the right wing dropped. So my heart sank, as you can imagine. I thought, these are the last few seconds of my life. I had no idea on how to get out of this. They call it a graveyard spiral. So I was thinking about a lot of things that I could do as I pulled the throttle immediately, and I pulled in the flaps, trying not to bend or break at this high speed. But I was going down, like the earth is turning like a disc in front of me. The altimeter shows a very rapid descent. The airspeed went from 45 knots to about 120 knots. And so it was extremely scary. I thought, this is it. So I tried everything I could think of with the controls, but nothing worked. So after dropping 1,000 feet out of the sky, I finally let go of all the controls and said, God, take this plane. And then instantly I came out of it, instantly. And so had I held on to the controls any longer, I would have run right into the ground. Just a few more seconds, it would have been over. I came out at about 1,500 feet above the ground. So I just pushed in the throttle to gain some altitude, get back to the airport, and just put the plane down. I didn't care soft or hard, just get solid feet under my solid ground under my feet. So that's the story.
Well, wow, what an amazing story. And I mean, so many things must have been going through your head as your plane is going towards the ground, like you mentioned. Describe that moment that you felt, again, in a little more detail, that moment of relief when the plane kind of, I mean, really, what did that feel like from your standpoint?
I felt like being carried by eagle's wings. I mean, this was a moment where I knew God wanted me to continue. There was a purpose for me. So, and also, the thing is this, I lost my younger brother when he was 21 years old. And the thought that my mother would have to, or my parents would have to stand at the grave of another son was just, was very worrisome to me. I was still single at the time, even though I was 32 years old. I was still single at the time. And I basically, I didn't have a family to take care of. In that sense, it would not have been that tragic, I guess. But for my parents to go through that again, I just was glad that wasn't the case.
Wow. Very powerful.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that journey between that experience you had and the book that you've now written. What was the inspiration? How did that journey happen for you?
Yeah. What's interesting, it took 30 years between the incident and that I wrote the book. But what happened is, as I started to tell the story to people over the years, one time I remember there was a lady at work. We lived in Tennessee at the time. And I told her the story and she said, wow, you just ministered to me. I said, well, how so? How did that minister to you? She said, there was just something that I just realized right now, I just need to let it go. Just by telling her that story. And then as I shared that story more often with people, they said, yeah, this is really helping me. And so I was at a church event, at a retreat for a whole week. And the guide, or the person who was in charge, he wanted me to do a seminar and to tell the story. So I just told the story. And then I asked people, what is it in your life that you need to let go of? And then I asked the question, so what is the reason why you're not letting go of this thing, whatever it was? And there were people crying. It was very emotional for them. And so that's when I started to realize there is so much of a need for this to be put out. There's a need for people to let go of things. People are holding on to so many things that are just slowing them down and that are making life difficult, making life painful. And so I came up with the idea at that retreat that I would write the book. I still had a full-time job and I was very busy, raising a couple of kids and so on. And I started to write a little bit here and there, but I sort of put it on the back burner. And then finally, after I lost my job at the age of 60 and started my own business, and I also got a coach, and my high performance coach, we talked and he said, I think you need to write this book. And so I said, yeah, I think you're right. So I wrote the book and I just wrote it. I kept it fairly generic in the sense where I didn't put a lot of detail in it. I didn't have many scriptures in there and so on. I wanted to have a very broad appeal. And then I discussed it with my coach, and I also discussed it with somebody who was interested in publishing it or working with me as a self-publisher. And they said, yeah, you need to put more of yourself into the book. You need to flesh it out more. You need to tell your own personal stories in each chapter. And then you need to include the scriptures, because that's you, because you're a Bible believer. And these scriptures help you in your life. Use them to appeal to help others as well. And if that offends them, then that's just not your tribe.
Sure.
Then that's not your niche. Don't worry about it. But it will. And when I realized that, when I did that, it really gave the book a lot more depth and meaning.
That's incredible. That's really good.
Yeah.
So someone who is able to pick up your book, and tell us a little bit about maybe a story or something that didn't quite make it into the book, something that you wish you would have included. Is there anything you can think of?
Maybe, I mean, I talked a little bit about when I got back into that plane the same day, 3 hours later, after the adrenaline went down. I realized, had I not gotten back into the plane that same day, the fear would have built up so much that probably would have given up my dream. But it took a lot of courage to get back into it. As a solo flight, I just took 3 takeoffs and landings. And, my thought, and that's not what I was sharing in the book, was that, as I said earlier, I would not want my mother to stand at the grave of another son. So that was, I guess, the biggest fear that I had and that I had to face, because I realized also rationally and statistically, you can die for any reason, and so I'm really glad I did that.
Yes, that's a powerful lesson. Just the ability to get back into the game, back into the fight, back into, the pursuit of your dreams in your life, even when you have something scary happen like that. So
Absolutely.
that was a good bit of wisdom on your part. There must have been something inside of you that kind of knew subconsciously, I need to conquer this fear right now, or I may not conquer it again in the future.
Well, it was actually in a situation that I remembered when I was a kid, and I actually write that in the book. I had an aunt who came to visit us regularly, and on a Sunday afternoon, she usually came and showed us slides. She took a lot of trips and stuff, and she was on her way home, and she got into a car accident, which was her fault. The car got totaled. Thankfully, nobody got hurt, and so, at least not seriously, from what I remember. And the next day, my dad took her to a dealership to buy a new car, because he wanted to make sure that she didn't build up so much fear that she would say, no, I'm giving up driving. And so I remembered that situation that came to mind. And then I said, yeah, I need to get back on that plane today.
Wow, that's great. That is really good. So if someone is watching or listening and they don't happen to get around to getting your book, what is one thought that you would want to leave with them? Like, what is something that you would want them to hear, experience, know, even if they don't happen to be able to get a hold of your book?
Well, if there's anything in your life that's holding you back, if it's an emotion that you feel, if it's a frustration, if it's a fear, if it's a worry, those things come up most often. Realize that letting go of those things that hold you back is like taking the foot off the brake. And, I'm a high performance coach, and I teach my students or coach my students through high performance habits. That's like stepping on the gas. But before you step on the gas and put in all that effort, take the foot off the brake first, because you may work so hard trying to do something, accomplish something, but you still have your foot on the brake. There may be some pain, some trauma, something in you that you need to let go of so that you can be your best.
Wow, that's very powerful. Very powerful. And you mentioned the fact that you do high performance coaching. If someone were interested in finding out more about you and what you do, where would we go to find this information?
Well, you can go to my website and that is carried on eagle's wings, all one word, carriedoneagleswings.com. And there you can find it. You can learn more about the book at lettinggosavedmylife.com. lettinggosavedmylife.com, and there you'll get the book, and it's available in audio also and in as an ebook. So whichever way you like to consume it the best. I actually have coaching style questions at the end of each chapter so that you can really contemplate, and there's room to journal. So if you like to read, I think it's the best way to do it, because it really helps you to be able to reflect on things that you're reading.
That is great. lettinggosavedmylife.com and also carriedoneagleswings.com. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Reinhard, for joining us for this episode of the Compendium podcast. I believe you've added a ton of value to our listeners and our viewers. For those of you watching and listening, please check out the book, carriedoneagleswings.com. And the second one was lettinggosavedmylife.com. That's right. Those are great URLs to visit. And also you can check us out at leadershipbooks.com. Once again, Reinhard, thank you for joining us today, and we wish you the best in all of your ventures.
Thank you very much. It was a great honor.
Thank you for joining us for today's broadcast. I do hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And be sure to visit us online at leadershipbooks.store. There you'll find the works of some of the finest thought leaders today. And be sure to tune in here each week to gain even deeper insights from one of those leaders on the Compendium podcast.